In 14 years working shore excursions on cruise ships, I watched passengers waste an average of $340 every single cruise on excursions they could have gotten cheaper, gotten free, or never should have booked at all. And the worst part? Most of them paid for it before they ever stepped on the ship. They never found out until they were standing on a dock in some port, looking at a tour operator selling the exact same thing for half the price. And I know what you might be thinking. You've cruised before. You've booked a few excursions. Maybe you think you've already figured out the game. But here's the thing. I wasn't a passenger trying to save a few bucks at the excursion desk. I was the guy running that desk. I was the one selling you the tour, processing your refund, and watching the exact same money mistakes happen week after week for over a decade. My name's Marcus Hale. I just left the cruise industry after 14 years. I started as a shore excursions associate on mainstream lines, worked my way up to shore excursions manager on premium lines, and spent my last 3 years coordinating excursion operations on a luxury line. And now that I don't have an employer to protect, I can tell you what active crew members can't. What I'm about to share with you aren't scams or loopholes. They're the real mechanics of how excursions are priced, sold, and refunded. The stuff we knew behind the desk, but we're never going to volunteer unless you ask the right way. If you're watching this and you find it useful, do me one favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. It genuinely helps me keep making these. So in this video, I'm walking you through 13 excursion tips that will completely change how you spend money on shore days. Some of these will save you hundreds of dollars. Some will save you from a ruined day in port, and a few will genuinely surprise you, even if you've cruised 20 times. Because here's what I learned watching thousands of passengers come through my desk. The ones who had the best shore days weren't the ones who spent the most. They were the ones who knew what to book, what to skip, and exactly what to say when something went wrong. Let's start with the mistake that happens before you even pack your bags. The first one is prepaying for excursions you haven't researched. When you book your cruise online, the cruise line shows you a beautiful menu of shore excursions and pushes you to lock them in right then. They tell you they'll sell out. And sometimes that's true. But most of the time, that early booking is pure profit margin for them. The same beach day, the same city tour, the same snorkeling trip is almost always available from a local operator at the port for 30 to 50% less. The cruise line marks these up heavily because they're the convenient option. So before you book a single excursion through the cruise line, do this. Search the name of the port plus the word tours and see who operates the same experiences independently. You'll often find the cruise line is reselling you a local company's tour with a 40% markup stacked on top. Now here's one that creates more frustration than almost anything else. People assume every cruise line excursion is operated by the cruise line. It isn't. Almost all of them are run by third-party local operators. The cruise line is just the middleman taking a cut. So when you book independently with that same local operator directly, you're getting the identical guide, the identical bus, the identical experience, minus the markup. The catch is the guarantee, and I'll be honest with you about it. When you book through the ship, if that tour runs late, the ship waits for you. When you book independently, it doesn't. So here's the rule I give people. For excursions far from port or in unpredictable traffic, book through the ship for the safety net. For anything close to the dock, book independent and save the money. Next, most passengers don't realize you can cancel a cruise line excursion for a full refund, but only inside a specific window. On most lines, that window closes 48 hours before the port day. After that, you're locked in, even if the weather turns, even if you change your mind. Here's what the smart passengers do. They book the excursions they think they want early to hold the spot, then they reassess 2 or 3 days into the cruise once they know the weather and how they actually feel. If you want to cancel, don't wait. Go to the excursion desk and say this exactly. I'd like to cancel this excursion within the refund window and have it credited back to my onboard account. Don't say you want your money back. Say credited to your onboard account. That's the language the system processes instantly. If you're getting value out of this so far, take a quick second to hit like and subscribe, and tap that notification bell. It tells the channel to keep these coming, and I've got years of this stuff left to share. Here's something most people don't know exists. If your excursion gets canceled by the cruise line, you're owed more than just your money back. When a tour gets canceled because of weather, mechanical issues, or low bookings, the cruise line refunds you automatically. But a lot of passengers don't realize that if it's canceled at the last minute and it disrupts your plans, you can ask for a goodwill onboard credit on top of the refund. I approve these regularly. Walk up to the desk and say, "I understand the excursion was canceled, but it was a key reason I chose this port. Is there any onboard credit available for the inconvenience?" Sometimes there's nothing. But often there's a $50 or $100 credit sitting there that only gets offered if you ask. Now this next one genuinely saves people the most money, and almost nobody does it. In a lot of ports, you don't need an excursion at all. The cruise line wants you to believe the only safe way off the ship is on one of their tours. That's not true. In dozens of ports, the town, the beach, or the main attraction is a short, cheap walk or taxi ride from where the ship docks. I watched passengers pay $80 for a beach transfer excursion when the beach was a $10 cab ride away. Before you book anything, look up how far the main attractions actually are from the cruise terminal. Half the time, you'll find you can do it yourself for a fraction of the cost and on your own schedule. Here's a tip that surprises people. The excursion desk has discretion to move you between tours, and they'll often do it without charging the difference. Say you booked a tour and then heard from another passenger that a different one is better. Most people assume they're stuck. They're not. If there's space on the tour you want and it's the same price tier, the desk can usually switch you at no cost. Just go up and say, "I'd like to switch from this excursion to that one. Is there availability? And can you move me without a price difference?" On day 1 or 2, the answer is often yes. By day 5, the good tours are full, and that flexibility is gone. Now here's one I really want you to understand, because it costs people real money. Tipping on excursions. The cruise line excursions almost never include the guide's tip, and people either forget entirely or massively overpay out of guilt. Local independent operators sometimes do include it, so before any tour, just ask the guide or check the description whether gratuity is included. If it's not, a standard tip is plenty. You don't need to hand over $20 per person because you feel awkward. I watched generous, well-meaning passengers tip 3 times what was expected simply because nobody told them what was normal. We're about halfway through, so quick reminder. If this is helping you plan your next cruise, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the tips most passengers never even think to ask about. Here's one that almost nobody uses. If you book the same excursion as a group, you can often negotiate a better rate with independent operators in port. Cruise line prices are fixed. There's no haggling at that desk, I promise you. But the local operator standing on the dock, the ones running the boats and the vans, they have flexibility, especially later in the day when they have empty seats to fill. If you've got a group of 4, 6, 8 people, you have real leverage. Walk up and say, "We're a group of 6. What's your best price if we all book right now?" You'll be shocked how often that number drops. Next, watch out for the excursions that are really just shopping trips in disguise. Some tours, especially the cheaper city tours, are designed to dump you at jewelry stores, rum shops, or souvenir markets that pay the operator a commission. You think you're getting a tour of the island. What you're actually getting is 40 minutes of sightseeing and 90 minutes in stores you didn't ask to visit. Read the itinerary carefully. If it mentions shopping stops, panoramic shopping, or visits to local artisans, that's the tell. A real tour spends its time at the actual destination, not at a register. Here's something I processed constantly behind the desk. If your excursion was genuinely not as described, you can get a partial refund, but you have to report it while you're still on the ship. I'm talking about the snorkeling trip where you never got in the water, the city tour that skipped half the stops it promised, the beach day where the beach was closed. The cruise line doesn't advertise this, but I adjusted these charges all the time. The key is reporting it the same day, not at the end of the cruise. Walk up and say, "This excursion didn't deliver what the description promised, and here's specifically what was missing. Is there an adjustment available?" Be specific and be calm. If you wait until the final night and complain in frustration, you'll get a form letter. Report it day of, and you'll often get a credit. Here's a timing tip most people get wrong. The best excursions in every port sell out, but not always before the cruise. Cancellations open up spots constantly, especially in the first 2 days on board. So if the tour you wanted showed as sold out when you booked online, do not give up. Go to the excursion desk on day 1 and say, "I know this tour was full, but if any spots opened up from cancellations, I'd like to be added." Then check back on day 2. The inventory updates daily, and the desk sees openings the website never shows. I got people onto fully booked tours this way every single week. This next one matters more than people realize, so before I give it to you, do me a favor and make sure you've hit like and subscribed and turned on that notification bell. It really does keep this channel going. Here's the big one, and this is what I really want you to understand. The person at the excursion desk can see your entire account, your booking history, your loyalty status, what you've spent on board, what you've complained about, and notes from your previous cruises. If you've been a loyal, polite, reasonable guest, that person has real discretion to help you in ways that are never advertised. A free upgrade on a tour, a waived cancellation fee, a goodwill credit. But all of that discretion vanishes the moment you're rude, or your account shows you complain about everything, or you've got a pattern of demanding refunds on every cruise. I had a man come to my desk who had sailed with us 8 times, never caused a problem, always pleasant. His excursion got double booked by a system error. I moved him to a premium tour at no charge and threw in a credit, because his account told me he'd earned it. But I had another guest scream at me on day 1 about a tour that ran exactly as described, and his history showed he'd done the same thing on 2 prior cruises. I helped him within policy, and not 1 inch beyond. The people at that desk want to go to bat for you. You just have to give them a reason to. Here's the thread running through all 13 of these. Every single one works because the cruise lines built flexibility into the system. They just don't advertise it. The refund windows exist. The independent operators exist. The discretion at that desk is real. The free options in port are sitting right there. But you have to know they exist, and you have to ask the right way at the right time. That $340 the average passenger wastes, the number I mentioned at the very start, almost all of it comes down to booking blind, booking too early, and never asking the questions that would have saved them. You don't have to memorize all 13 of these. Pick the 2 or 3 that matter most for your next cruise and start there. Build your confidence, because once you understand how excursions are really priced and sold, shore days stop feeling like something the cruise line does to you and start feeling like something you control. I'll tell you what I learned in 14 years behind that desk. The passengers who had the best shore days weren't the ones who booked the most expensive tours. They were the ones who did a little research, asked a few smart questions, and treated the person at the desk like a human being. They were the ones who reported problems on day 1 instead of day 6. They were the ones who understood that the person standing at that excursion desk has far more power to help them than they ever realized. So before your next cruise, do this. Research what your ports actually cost on your own before you book a single excursion through the ship. Reassess your bookings 2 days in before the refund window closes, and if something goes wrong on a tour, report it the same day, not when you're packing your suitcase on the final night. The cruise lines aren't hiding this from you because they're evil. They're just not going out of their way to tell you. Now you know. And if this saved you even one wasted excursion or one unnecessary charge on your next cruise, then I did what I set out to do. So do me that last favor. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because next time I'm going to walk you through the exact words that got passengers free private tours the cruise line never wanted them to know about.